Hey everybody, welcome into the Horseshoe. Ohio State 45, Arkansas State 12. It is Snap Judgments brought to you by the podcast and Dotting the Eyes. We're going to dive right into it in the best way we can. We're going to get out of the wind. It's also, full disclosure, take 2 for Snappy Jays this week. We're trying to work through the audio for you people, America. That's Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Kind of a strange one where it feels like there's a lot to sort of nitpick for Ohio State. But they also comfortably won a non-conference suit-up game without a couple of their best players or the best wide receiver available. The passing game was back. The defense has allowed 1 touchdown in 8 quarters. A lot of stuff that seems pretty good. And then also some stuff that maybe you might be able to look at and say, this can get a lot better, Bill.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. It's a week 2 game against a team that you were a 40-point favorite over for a reason. It was dead here compared to last week, which is understandable. No one expects it to be the same way it was when the number 5 team in the country comes in here. But I think you kind of felt that maybe holding the team back a little bit, just not a whole lot of energy throughout the game. But it was a little clunky. But I also thought too there were some things that from last week you wanted to see get a little better. Probably the passing game, more explosion out of the passing game being one of them, and that certainly happened. And I thought the defense looked pretty good. Like as you said, 1 touchdown in 8 quarters. I don't really know what you're supposed to nitpick with that.
Yeah, you're going to win a lot of games on it.
Yeah, especially when you think about the fact that at least 2 of the field goal drives were pretty much given to Arkansas State by Ohio State penalties. I've never heard of jumping over the punt.
The shield.
The punt shield. Number one, Sir Mitchell didn't jump over them. He jumped into them, and they kind of threw him over them. But who cares about that?
Rules are rules, man.
Emeka Egbuka returns a punt for a touchdown, and he gets called back for 2 penalties on the play. And that's just sort of the way that they went. You have these moments where you're like, wow, that looks like the Ohio State you come to expect. And then something really just clunky happens, and you go, wow, that doesn't make any sense. Why does the offensive line C.J. Stroud, I think in the second quarter of the game, Ohio State had all the momentum in the world, and they have this 3-and-out. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It was an ugly 3-and-out, and it was just a little disjointed. And as you said, when you're playing a team like this, you're a huge favorite for a reason, and I think it's easy to understand if you look at the 95,000, however many people were here, they all sort of took.
I believe it was over 100,000.
Oh, sure.
You disputing that?
It took a little bit of time for people to realize there was a game going on, and I think to the credit of the Ohio State players, they came out with some intensity and then scored immediately. Wow, this is going to be pretty easy. And I think from that point, it's just about managing egos and managing, emotion, and they didn't do a very good job of that throughout the first half.
There was a stretch mid-game where I want to say the offense, I think, ran 20 plays, had 3 touchdowns and 3 punts, which feels like it shouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
Maybe my math is slightly off on there, but I don't think I've ever seen that before.
I think you said at one point it was 31 plays and 31 points. Generally what you would feel pretty good about, and I'm not sure that Ohio State did.
No, probably not.
But they won comfortably, as they were supposed to. We'll start again where we did last week with injury updates. The third quarter, Mike Hall, scary situation there for Ohio State. He's been one of their best, if not the best. I guess there's an argument to be made there, at least on the defensive line. He's been a wrecking ball, 5 tackles for loss in 2 games, and is becoming a star. And he's laying on the turf, and it looked like a left shoulder issue. He came off, walked on his own to the sideline. They took off the pads and checked that out, evaluated him. Brian Day said after the game, not expected to be a long-term issue. Of course, they're going to evaluate him much the same way that they did Jackson Smith-Njigba and Julian Fleming over the last week. Both of those wide receivers came out beforehand to give it a test. They did not come in with the rest of the team. I think it was pretty clear at that point that they were not going to be able to play. Just try to rehab a little bit and stay fresh and get ready for next week. There's optimism that both of those guys could be ready by then. And Jordan Hancock, another one that I think we'll talk a good amount about, because if there was an area where, speaking only for myself, that I would nitpick, Denzel Burke struggled early. Coaching staff seemed to agree with that. He had those 2 passing interferences. He got burned for a deep ball down the right sideline in the second quarter, and then they put J.K. Johnson into the game. I think there were a lot of expectations for Denzel Burke, and so far it hasn't quite lived up to that. And at least to Ohio State's credit, they're not just letting those situations fester maybe the way they have in the past.
It does feel like I mean, neither one of these two teams they played have been prolific passing teams, but it does feel like that when they wanted to throw the ball, they've kind of gone Denzel's way as opposed to going Cameron Brown's way, which says one about Cameron Brown. I think people respect him, but two, maybe there's a vulnerability there that people sense with Denzel. I suppose you have to pick one, and Denzel's the younger guy. But yeah, just not a great start to the season for him. Not to say he can't bounce back. The penalties, I think, are maybe the biggest thing. If he gets beat, like corners get beat from time to time, you don't like it when it happens. You can't be grabbing guys as much as he is for a guy who's played as much as he has to this point.
And you can't let one penalty lead immediately to the next play getting burnt, and then the penalty after that. Like playing cornerback, you have to have that short attention, short memory, I guess. And I think that this actually goes back to last year's Michigan game for Denzel, a little bit maybe even to the Michigan State game when he hurt his shoulder last year and he didn't play the end of last year 100%. And he just doesn't look like the same player to me that he did at this part of the season last year. But whatever the reason is, they're in a defense that's given up one touchdown in the first 8 weeks. There's going to be a weak spot, and right now I think that is clearly one of the weak spots. And we saw J.K. Johnson get a lot of playing time today. Jordan Hancock has to get back because we talked all preseason about cornerback depth as a potential area of concern. Now it looks like it is a real area of concern because Cam Brown, thankfully, he's healthy in these first two games, but it's not like this is a kid that's been able to be counted on through his career. So in the event that something else shakes out, like boy, now all of a sudden you're looking a little sus.
A little sus. I'm sure there are a lot of cool words out here today. Great footage on television today. The other part about this that's relevant when it comes to personnel and injuries with that Mike Hall situation is that he is clearly elevating his game to a different level and taking the rest of the Ohio State defense with him. I don't mean to sound like a broken record. I'm not saying this after both of these games and on a lot of the podcast content throughout the week, but the substitutions. I understand the counter argument that you want to have a fresh player in the fourth quarter, and that's when it matters most. But every snap matters.
Right.
All snaps can dictate the outcome, and Ohio State had a chance to put this game away earlier. The best case scenario is that you don't need Mike Hall in the fourth quarter. If you put this game away in the first half, you might not have been out there in the third quarter when he got injured. That's not. I'm not trying to just cherry pick an argument that helps me, but I've talked to multiple former Buckeyes who've been watching this and the way that Mike Hall is playing. They do not understand. So Mike Hall is clearly the most impactful defensive tackle that Ohio State has. He needs to be out there until he can't breathe. Let them go out and win. Like that's the way that they feel. I know that that's maybe an old school mentality and get off my lawn or whatever, but you can see that Ohio State is not the same defense when Mike Hall is out there.
Rotating players is great. It's a luxury that Ohio State has that a lot of programs don't. There have been times in the past, and I feel this way now, where I feel like they've done it just because they think they can do it. But when there's a drop ball, I just don't think you should do it. It's great, you're right. If you could have Mike Hall fresh at the end of the game, that would be fantastic. But if the trade-off is in the middle of the game, you're not as good, I don't know that I take that trade-off. And Mike Hall's a younger player, doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires just yet. I think he can probably handle a bigger workload. It's not like the defense is getting moved around and giving up a ton of points, but there is a tangible difference when that guy's not on the field, when JT Tuimoloau's not on the field. Like I think these top guys just need to play more.
Yeah, and you're removing the guy that arguably has played better than anybody on the defensive line, but is also the spark plug of the defensive unit in general. So when you take him off the field because you're trying to get other guys these reps, as I said, I understand why you do it. You're trying to manage egos. You're trying to keep people fresh. You're trying to, experiment with stuff. But I just would rather experiment when you're up 56-0, as opposed to when it's, 17-9 with 6 minutes to go in the second quarter. Walk around the field like, it's a one-score game. It's sort of, and you're watching Ohio State rotating all these guys, and the difference in productivity, the difference in push from the defensive line is so much different. The difference is so different that it's like vastly different.
Big difference.
You know what I mean?
The difference is the difference.
Yes, the standard is the standard, and the difference is the difference, and there is a large difference.
Okay, turns out that the Ohio State passing attack is still pretty good. Marvin Harrison seems all right.
Yeah, they got that timing thing figured out, I think, between he and CJ Stroud. They had
7 catches for 184 and 3 touchdowns for Marv.
Yeah, I think it was like 4 or 5 40-yard pass plays in this game. It was sort of like that or not much, which maybe Ryan Day would not prefer. Even C.J. Stroud said after the game he was, I think, losing his patience a little bit with the questions about why aren't you perfect yet. But he did say he needs to be a little more efficient, kind of working the shorter stuff in the middle of the field. And that's clear sometimes when you watch it, but they got the explosive passing game calibrated in this game when it seemed like a little bit of a struggle last week.
Marvin Harrison, just the second Ohio State player in school history with 2 games that include 3 touchdowns. It's difficult for me to get through all those numbers and say it correctly, but I'm practiced at it.
He has 2 3-touchdown games, and only one person's ever done that before.
But now there's 2.
Right. And he's done it in 3 games, essentially, because he's really only played 3 games.
Well, and
Joey Galloway played many more games.
he sure did. And to borrow a stat from Bill Landis, his last 18 catches, 6 have gone for touchdowns. That's efficiency right there.
You know what I like about Marv, though, is that I know when he goes home tonight and he puts on the tape, he's going to look to the touchdown that he lost, that he should have had.
He's going to be like, why did Burke keep asking me about
Because
it?
I think that sort of play is like, I'm fascinated by that sort of play just in general because there's such a small space and you catch the ball and you turn. And like, how do you know where to put it? I mean, it's just bad luck. The guy, I was 10 yards away from that play. The guy punched the ball perfectly. I still think Marvin scored on the play. I still think he had it over the white line, which is very good for us if it happens.
Indeed.
But, for him, that would have been, he would have been the second player to have 4 touchdowns in the game in Ohio State history. No Brown. But I just think it's cool to watch the growth, and I think that Marvin and CJ probably got a little help this week, knowing that Jackson wasn't going to be out there, knowing that Julian Fleming probably wouldn't be out there. Maybe you got a few more reps together this week in preparation for a bigger role, knowing that he would have it.
Watching the Burm and Marv show, this game was one of my favorites. Burm suggesting that C.J. Stroud should not have thrown down into that corner there, a little hole shot. Perfectly
Did you
placed.
know this guy slipping on the field? A couple times. 3 or 4 times I watched someone slip. Oh my God.
This field stinks.
I don't think that this is good.
Oh, so this new field is bad.
I don't know.
It was really
Look in the end zone. The paint seems to already be fading on it. I don't understand
Well, how paint works when it's just paint is like being put on little pebbles.
I don't know how paint works. You go on your tombstone.
Magnets, how do they work? No, Austin's trying to make fun of me because there was a play, and I'm like, I don't know why CJ. I think it's rare to have the confidence that he has in himself to throw that ball, and in Marvin, the guy who again has really only played 3 games in his career, to have the confidence to say, hey, go get this because I'm going to throw it in a spot where I have no business throwing it. You have no business catching it, but if you don't catch it, no one else is either. And I guess that's why he's a Heisman candidate quarterback, right? Just a guy.
It's a great throw.
It was a hell of a throw, and it was a great catch, but I didn't feel like it was crazy. The safety was coming over.
I didn't see it like you guys saw it, so I'm just
saying all 22.
Yeah, from my perspective, I was like, well, that is a gutsy throw to make. But
not a lot of. Your point is correct that not a lot of quarterbacks can do.
I don't think there are many. However, Justin Fields threw like an identical pass to that when they played Rutgers here in 2020 in the empty stadium. And at the time, everyone was like, "That's an NFL throw." He's the same dude.
He's good.
Yeah,
C.J. Stroud is good. Marvin Harrison is good. Mecca Luka went over 100 yards as well.
he did.
I don't know.
Doubled up. They were.
I believe you. It was like one of those weird games.
Yeah, I believe Jerry said.
No one else really had it.
They were the 198th and 199th 100-yard receiving games in school history. And I don't know how many times it's been done together.
200's coming next week for Case over.
It's coming hot. A lot of those wheel routes, they're coming.
I felt like this was a low-key, very nice game for the tight ends. Good blocking from G. Scott and Kate Stover on Trevion Henderson's long touchdown run. Kate caught that wheel route, which felt like they were trying to get him a touchdown on Mecca's long touchdown. They kind of switched their routes, and no offense to Cade, for some reason, 2 Arkansas State defenders ran at him instead of running with the Mecca. So Mecca was the one that was wide open instead. But I thought that position at a time when they're down receivers in need, maybe to play a little more 12 personnel, played pretty well for them.
To give a lot of credit there to Josh Proctor for the bounce back. He started and played extensively. played very well. Nothing crazy, flashy, just solid football in the secondary. And coming off of that conversation and being benched after one drive, that wasn't what he wanted, and that was a difficult situation for him. I asked Josh after the game, and I talked to his family, I talked to Perry Eliano. I just think young Josh Proctor might not have responded the exact same way that this more mature version has.
After 4 years, it has to be mature.
Didn't throw any gloves into the stands and storm off last week for one.
Didn't try to strip off his uniform.
Didn't strip off his uniform and head to the locker room, and he was a professional about it. I think that's telling, not just for Josh Proctor, but maybe for this chemistry or belief or trust in the coaching staff, however you want to put it. I think that's notable because he was able to come back and have a great week of practice and contribute for a unit that, how would you say it? It seems like it's fueled and powered
Powered by the
secondary.
Yeah. It's a secondary.
It's a safety.
Powered defense.
It's a safety-driven defense.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Let's go with that. It's a safety-driven. He's a key part of that. Now we'll see if that continues, but
you hit the nail right on the head. Like he didn't go out there and make flashy plays. That's not what they need the safety to do. Like it's good to have a safety that can make flashy plays. Malik Hooker made a lot of those in this building back in 2015 or 2016, but that's not what you need. You need to make sure the guy running at you doesn't get behind you. Like that's the job of the safety. And so for Josh, sometimes I think there's always been this light. Like I want to hit people and blow them up, and if I miss, big deal. Like that, it is a big deal, man. Like you can't let the guy get behind you. And I think Perry Eliano deserves a ton of credit. We'll see if Tim Walton gets the same effect out of Denzel Burke by pulling him off the field today, like he did that Perry Eliano got out of Josh Proctor. Because that, to me, may be the difference between a guy who's been in the program 5 years and a guy who's been in the program 1 year, and how they handle that sort of circumstance. Because Perry Eliano is a calm, easygoing guy. Tim Walton was not being calm and easygoing by Denzel Burke on the field today, and I'm curious to see how that translates into this next week of practice.
Bill, anything else?
Another good game for Jesse Marco.
Get some pump.
I mean that somewhat seriously too.
He looked pretty rough when we were training camp.
Yeah, and he's been awesome. And they really needed him last week, and he flipped the field a couple times this week too. So good job on him.
Perfect. Cabinet with some punting, just what you'd expect.
That's right.
On Oh, we got more.
Let's talk about Caden Curry.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Caden Curry, I think
It's weird. I thought we already did that.
was on the field. He was on the field for 7 plays, and he made 5 tackles, and he's just a dude that people are going to want to watch. And I think that when you look at this defense and as it evolves over the next few weeks, how do you find ways to get playmakers on the field and in the front 7? Because the back 7, it's about depth and who's healthy, who's not. But in the front 7, if you have to choose between playing Caden Curry, who comes in and makes plays, or other guys that are a little more veteran that are just sort of right now not making plays, I guess I lean towards the guy who makes plays. That's sort of my preference.
That's American. Playmakers are better than non-playmakers.
Yes, if you're going to play football, you should play the guys who make football plays.
I believe in this staff's willingness to do that a little more.
More than last year, I agree. I think that they will. I don't think that this is the staff that's going to play the game and say, "Well, we owe it to this person." I really think it's a clean slate for everyone. And we saw Caden Curry flash, and that's what I know. This I've been telling people for a while.
Well, I engaged you stuff about Caden Curry.
Caden Curry's really freaking good, man. That is a football player. You may not look the part. He's only 6'2.5". 250 pounds or whatever. It's John Simon was here today. And to me, that's Caden Curry's life down the road, but not a guy.
Baby John Simon?
Not a guy.
Not Baby Bosa.
Not a Baby Bosa. He's a little Nick Bosa. Have you ever seen Nick Bosa?
Yeah.
My God. That is not a normal human being. Okay? It's an abnormal being. Caden Curry looks more like a human than Nick Bosa, who looks to be some sort of hybrid.
Lab creator.
If you're looking for 3 abnormal beings, look no further. Right here on the podcast, it's been Snap Judgment, Snappy Jays, coming to you from the press box instead of the field. We tried the other way.
It was windy.
we've had a rough week. We were not ready for the dire wolves of Arkansas State, but I should have been. But we will go back into the film room. We'll make some corrections and get ready. I can't believe what I'm about to say, but it is a prime time matchup with TOL.
EDO.
Next week, we're going to get ready. We're going to have a lot more coverage coming from this win over Arkansas State. And, of course, daily podcasts, the live show at the Horseshoe Lounge, and so much more. Buckeye Q, we're going to get back into it as the season rolls along. Ohio State now 2-0 with a 45-12 win over Arkansas State. For Bill, I'm Austin Ward. See you Monday.